You're going to have to do that.
Yeah.
And they're going to quit if something doesn't change. Are just a little bit crazier. A lot of builders actually lost some money. She will leave you. You have to be scanning every second. Don't talk to the media at all. And I went through all the details and I said, what you're saying about me isn't true, and here's the evidence. And what I learned is that
So James, like you built a successful company. So the company started in 2011, and you built quite a successful franchise construction business. One thing I wanted to ask before we get into that really deep narrative is you decided to make a decision to start that business. I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs wanting to start the business, but they never do it. They just don't. They procrastinate and they think about it for years, right? And then I think they get to the end of their life and they probably have a bit of regret saying, I wish I'd started that business.
Well, I'd like to put something to you, Lawrence, and I think that business owners are people who are just a little bit crazier than everyone else. And I had a conversation with a lady.
I think James is calling me crazy, but
yeah, a little bit. I'll give you the background. So I had a conversation with this very smart lady that works at head office.
Yeah.
And she said to me, I want to help the Stroud builder franchisees. I said, well, that's where you're going wrong. You know, she's a very smart lady, and she would have been the girl at school that I would have been getting her to help me with my homework or sitting beside her in an exam to try to get it across the line. And I said, business owners are those kids that sat in the back of the classroom and they had no end of energy. They're risk takers. School didn't really suit them. And you know, starting a business probably isn't a thing that sensible people do. So that's the way I framed it to her. I said, these guys, they're kind of crazy fellas, and they go out and start a business. And what I'd like you to do is see how you can help them in this crazy, dangerous venture that they've taken on.
Yeah. So you were working in the construction sector, right? Came here from Canada, met your partner, started working in the construction sector, industry. For you, was it like, oh, I can do this better? You know, I think I can do this better.
It totally was. Yeah. It totally was. And like, so on one hand, you're told when you're a young guy, when you go to work, make sure you do what the boss says and try to find a way to be useful. And if you get sacked, well, that'll be shameful. We don't get sacked. But then at the other corner, you go to your job and you go, my boss is doing things differently than what I would do. So what I sometimes say to young guys, Lawrence, is if you think you're smarter than your boss, maybe you are. Maybe you are. And the only way you're going to find out if you're smarter than your boss is putting your money where your cheek is, sort of thing, and going and having a crack yourself.
Yeah, so that's what you did. Did you fail first up, or did it just work out for you, right? That's what, because, you know, that takes courage. People are scared. They have families to support. Maybe some of them, you know, have young families. So it's risky, right?
I think my point of greatest failure was after I bought my franchise, and I was at a point where I almost wasn't able to keep going because the problems I was having was very high turnover in the business. And Staff, exactly. Yeah, not money, staff.
Let's get that clear. It was
very high staff turnover.
Talent.
And so I had a mate come in and help me with supervision, and he was a good enough friend that he was able to have, you know, your best friends are the ones that tell you when you're really screwing up, and he was that guy. And he came in and he said, the way you speak to your staff in your office, Stroudy, he says, you're very good at this, and he said, I can see this being a very amazing experience for you. You're going to do well in business, but he says, you cannot treat your staff the way you're treating them.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in the cafe while he told me this, and I had all sorts of excuses. I said, oh no, they're just a bit soft, they need to toughen up, things like that. And he actually got so frustrated with me that he started crying. And he said, you have to listen to me, mate. If you can fix this one thing with how you treat the people in your business, it'll be a gold mine, it'll take off. So I didn't take his advice, and then I got to a point where more of my staff quit. I had more problems with people being unhappy working there. And I hired a mentor, I hired a business coach to come in and help me with it. And he said, look, he changed the way that I treated the staff. Now, when your building company gets to the point where you've got office staff, they're way different to deal with. And you have to behave so much differently than how you did when you were on the site with a bunch of blokes. That was the first lesson I learned. And
so he was right.
He was absolutely right.
He was
Lawrence.
right, and you didn't take his advice. It's hard though, right? I think entrepreneurs and business owners hear that a lot. I hear that. I used to hear that because I used to be pretty tough on people. I think there's a balance, sure.
They say it's not what you say, it's how you said it.
Yeah.
And on the site, it's a rougher environment. You're used to people telling you things. You're yelling over machinery and equipment and dust and wind.
Yeah.
And you get into an office. It was quite an adjustment for me. And I think that, strangely enough, was probably the point I come closest to failing and just throwing in the towel. I just could not keep staff around, and I felt totally defeated.
Yeah. So what did you do? So I know you got the coach. I get that, and I think maybe the coach is sounding like he resonated with that message as well.
Yeah, he said you're totally approaching it the wrong way. So I signed up to a management training course, which we did, and this is going back to 2008.
Yeah.
And we were going to meet on a very early version of Zoom or Teams sort of thing. I can't even remember what it was called. It was just clunky as. But he was able
Skype.
to, I think, it might have been Skype. It might have been Skype. And I think we had the phone going and we could just see his PowerPoint slides on our computer screen. And that was like super tech back in 2008.
Yeah.
But he got these key ideas across to me about how that you need to be able to direct your team, but do it without breaking the relationship. And that was a real hard thing for me to get my head around.
So that's leadership. That's what they're saying.
Exactly.
Your leadership was not quite right.
Yeah, that's right.
So your management may have been good, like you understand operationally how the business should run, but the leadership component wasn't quite there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And now that I've learned that lesson, and I'm sure you have as well, Lawrence.
Oh, I haven't learned it at all. I'm still doing the same thing. I'm just joking. That was a joke.
I look at a thing that happens to me quite often, and I think you might see it, is where a carpentry contractor or an electrician or a plumber or a ceramic tile contractor will come in and say, look, I'm going to build my team up. I'm going to grow my business. I'm going to hire more staff. I'm going to buy more equipment because I want to be a bigger business. I want to make more money and all that.
Yeah.
And then they get the bungee cord or the boomerang effect where they hire a bunch more people. And then what happens is they lose control of it. They don't know how to communicate with their staff. They don't know how to get people to do what they want. The definition of being a leader is actually when someone follows you. If no one follows you, you're not a leader. You just want to be a leader.
Can I just jump in here? This is really common, right? So this is a subject matter. So, Tommy wants to start a company. He's a carpenter, so he's a chippy, and he just runs at it. So no planning, no forecast, no financials, none of that, right? Now, in your experience, how important is that to have that back end set up and the business plan locked and loaded?
Well, you gotta have some understanding. I feel like the two pieces of the puzzle that are mostly misunderstood are management ability and sales.
Yeah, sales.
So I have a saying that sales fixes everything. Like if you can get work, then you can it gives you the opportunity to try to sort out the downstream stuff, the production side of the business.
Because you have the money to be able to invest in it, right?
Well, you've got a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But if you're not good enough at the downstream stuff, then the universe has this balancing thing where your sales cut off. You don't do a good enough job of doing the plumbing or the tiling or whatever it is, and then you end back at square one, where your customers don't ask you to do jobs anymore. And if you don't have the management ability right, your staff leave. And one of the problems we have in Australia is a skill shortage. There's, you're building things, I'm building things. It's hard to get people to do things.
It's very difficult. Yeah, I notice a common narrative across trades and services, right, in Australia is that there's a lack of commercial understanding of how a business operates. So this is not even sales. Like this is
Absolutely.
Just, what insurances should I have? When are they renewable? When do I upgrade them? What are my workplace obligations? What does the law say? All that sort of stuff. So that's the commercial stuff. And then I find they have a dire lack of financial management.
That's the key one.
where they live like week to week, right? Or month to
Yeah.
month. And the company suffocates because it doesn't have enough cash flow, which is the oxygen a company needs to grow, right? What are your comments around that sort of currently in the market? Because you've been through that, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And so I think one of the best things these business coaches do is just teach you the formula. So you got revenue. You don't get to keep that revenue.
Yep.
And then you've got your overheads that you have to pay.
Yep.
Revenue subtract, start over again. So you got your revenue, and that's what we call, and then underneath that you got your job costs. So in the building business, you might get $10,000 worth of revenue in, but you've got to pay for the tiles, or you've got to pay for the material.
Yep.
And then from there, then you've got to take your overheads out of it. If you got to sit at home and do some book work in your building business, well then you got to pay for that book work before you got net profit.
Yeah. Yeah, profit, right? Revenue is just money until you pay all the bills.
Exactly. That's the thing that people don't understand.
Yeah, they don't. And I see a lot of even small construction company directors and founders. They struggle with free cash flow to scale and pay the bills. So if they don't get paid for 30 days from a particular project for a particular reason, where do you get your cash flow from?
Yeah,
Exactly. Very hard. But so you've scaled quite a big company now, right?
Yeah.
Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue flowing through your doors. When you got to that first milestone, and it's probably, let's just pick a number. Let's just say it's $100 million, right? We do $100 million in sales. I want to understand, do you use the same system to get to 100 million as you do, say, to 2 or 3, or are you constantly evolving your business?
So we're a franchise organization, and I think we're headed for around, combined between all the franchises, 350 million of turnover this year.
Yeah.
And we've got some businesses that are over 60 million, and some that are at 3. So definitely things are different. The top 5 builders at Stroud talk about things like middle management. And it's interesting because I just had this chat with them today. If you've got a guy that you talk to when you duck out of the office, you now have middle management.
Yeah.
So that's a difference right there.
Yeah.
In the medium-sized businesses, you start to have problems knowing about your staff, because once you get up to 5 or 6 staff, you need a thing called a boss whisperer. Have you ever heard of that?
No, what's that?
It's that staff member that comes to you to tell you that one of your staff members is unhappy and they're going to quit if something doesn't change. It's a boss whisperer.
Yeah.
And then you know what the next stage of a boss whisperer is? It's when your business gets big enough and you hire an HR person.
Yeah.
And that's a person that deals with leave and deals with recruiting, puts the ads out, deals with all of the contract renewals every year.
How many employees do you think you need before you get an HR person?
Around 15, probably.
Around 15. Okay. Sorry, carry on.
A lot of business owners will tell you that you get up in the morning and you're just full of enthusiasm for the day, and then you get a bunch of leave requests through. And for some reason, leave requests make me very sad. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
So I've heard other business owners say that. So
Is that because the business can't produce that day, or when those people are not there?
Well, if you're a founder of a business, you're the founder because you love the business. You have great fun chasing your goals. And then to receive a leave request over an email, it's just like, well, my staff aren't even thinking about working today. They're just thinking about not working.
Yeah.
Obviously, it has to be done. It's not a logical thought, but it's what an owner says.
Yeah.
And business owners, it's a nice thing to have an HR person, not to have to be dealing with leave requests on a day-to-day basis. You know, it's just something that they're going to be better at.
I want to pivot back to sales, right? Because I think it's an underappreciated asset in a company. And most people push sales down into the basement, right?
Absolutely, and I think you're onto gold here now, Lawrence, because the biggest thing when we recruit a new franchisee into the Stroud Group is making them believe that sales actually exists. So I had a great conversation with our guy from Brisbane West. His name's Brett, and he's a very smart guy. But he said, I just thought people just came and bought houses from us. I didn't realize that through sales techniques that we could increase that number substantially.
Oh, I call that he believes in the magic unicorns. Yeah.
Yeah, the deals just turn up.
Yeah,
and so that's their defense mechanism. You go and talk to a new builder and you say, look, we've got a bunch of sales techniques that we're going to use here, and we would like to apply them.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, no, I don't need to do that. Oh, I'll tell you something. Whenever I meet new builders that are thinking about joining the Stroud thing, and I say, look, we're quite good at sales and marketing.
Yeah.
They go, well, we've never had to do that. The work always just comes to us.
Yeah.
And they actually wear that as a badge of honor, how little marketing
Absolutely,
they do.
They do that. And that's a mistake, right? I hear it all the time. They go, oh, I don't advertise. I just word of mouth. That's how I run my business. And it's an ego trip, really.
Well, yeah, and you know what they end up being the best kept secret in their community.
Yeah.
You know, and when a new family moves to Toowoomba or moves to Port Macquarie, they just want to find the services and the people that they need. And if you can't make it hard for them to find you, that's not going to be good.
Yeah. So you're talking about advertising and getting the brand out there, right?
That's right, and it's kind of interwoven with sales. But we've just focused on sales ever since the end of 2023 when we were in a bit of a hole. And sales, it's a funny thing because when you start brainstorming on it, there's so much you can do to increase the amount of people that are coming to you about your business. And then, you know, a lot of these builders, they don't realize that when someone is interested, you still have to help them buy it. You know, and I always say that if sometimes I compare sales and that to dating, and I say that, remember back when you're in high school, if you want to be going out with that very beautiful girl, you're going to have the guts to go and ask her. You're going to have to be brave enough to go and ask her for a date. You're going to have to do that. And that's really the thing with sales is you're going to have to go to that customer and say, I'd really like to be your builder.
And take her out for dinner. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah,
that's right. It's like, I call it getting out of obscurity, right? They have to know you exist. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, what's your value proposition to that customer or that client, right? Why would I buy a house from you?
Exactly.
Because obviously you have competition, right? Like they could just go and buy another house from somebody else.
Yeah. So this is the way I frame it with the builders. I say that every Australian plays sport. When you go and play rugby, you'd be a rugby player.
Yep.
You can see the other team. You can see them standing there. You play New Zealand and they're doing their haka and you're going, oh, these guys are scary. You know, this is who you're playing. The problem with building companies is you're playing a game and it's just as competitive, but you can't see the other team. And sometimes I sit down with my teams and I say, guys, that building company across town that's winning a few more jobs than we are, they are trying just as hard as we are. They're trying to train their staff. They're trying to connect with their customers better. They're trying to make sure that they're on the top of Google. They're trying to make sure that they win awards at the HIA. They're doing all that stuff as well. It's not like... So let's lean in to the competition and let's try to enjoy the game of winning or the game of building, and let's try to enjoy winning at the game of building as much as we enjoy winning at the game of rugby or netball or cricket or whatever your sport is.
Is that a red flag for you when you're recruiting? And I'll just use the word recruitment. When you're recruiting franchisees, right? If they're not privy or open to that, hey, you have to sell your product. Like you operate under our brand, right? We need you to be profitable. We want you to be profitable.
I wouldn't say it's a red flag because it's pretty much the standard procedure.
Got it.
Every new builder we bring in from the wild, from the wilderness, that's pretty much normally their attitude.
Yeah.
And they I think people have the idea that the franchise will just bring in business, and it will. But when the business gets there, you got to do the right stuff.
Yeah.
You got to answer your phone. That's one of the simplest things. We went through this stage of improvement. We're sort of jumping around to different things that happened in the timeline, Lawrence, but we went through this one stage of improvement where we commissioned secret shoppers. And what the secret shoppers do is they ring your sales team and they go, how long does it take to get called back? And then when they do call back, what do they say?
Yeah.
And the results,
great strategy.
It was amazing what we found out. We found out that only about 45% of phone calls get answered on the first ring.
Yeah, super interesting.
And we went, well, we could win so much more business if we actually just answer the phone. Now, sales, if you're looking at sales, there's all of these really advanced techniques like mirroring, where you match your speed of talking and your tone to the person that you're with, and time management things. And look, we found that we didn't need to worry about that. We had to answer the phone.
Yeah, that's super interesting, right? Because no one does that.
We go and we'll talk to a new builder in some town in Australia who's considering becoming one of the Stroud tank builders.
Yeah.
And he'll say, look, I'm not sure that there's enough business available around here. There's a lot of good builders in this town already.
Yeah.
I just don't know if we should do this. And I said, do you think they're good builders? Yeah, well, they're very good. I said, okay, well, what really matters is how good they are at sales. Because, the best builder doesn't get to build the houses. The best seller gets to build the houses. And then because he gets the most experience at building houses, he becomes the best builder.
Yeah.
So why don't we do a little experiment?
Yeah.
Let's make a list of all the builders in this town, and let's send them a pretend inquiry and see how long it takes to get back. And then if you leave messages and say, please call me back, I'm interested in building a house, you probably find that about half of them won't call you back within 48 hours.
Super interesting.
So you can try that experiment and just see if it works. I'm sure that's what you'll find out.
This is what I think, right? I think we're in 2025, and even last year, the year before, maybe since COVID, the service level of businesses to their customer is terrible. No one calls you back. And if they do call you back, they don't know a lot about their service. They haven't been trained very well. Like, it's really messy. So I think it's really easy to win.
Why do you think that is?
In an environment that's really weak. I think it's a lack of leadership. I think what happened when everyone dispersed and this whole work from home initiative started, companies didn't know how to lead and manage teams, right?
Yeah.
So what happened, the byproduct of that is they lost accountability.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of them got it back because they thought if we send everyone home, it will save us money, right? So this works in our favor. We can cut the fat and get rid of people that we don't need, that we can use this act of God to be able to do that and get away with it. But they never came back from that because I tell you what, just service in general, I find very poor. But pre-COVID, I thought it was so much better.
Yeah.
So I think there's been a paradigm shift during that time.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I just wonder too, Lawrence, if it's just not, I mean, it was a really tough period. We were locked in our houses and people were not having fun. And I don't know, I can't really speak for other businesses, but what I'd like to say is that we made a conscious, deliberate decision to be more positive about our businesses. And
what does that mean?
well, like a lot of builders actually lost some money. And a lot of builders went backwards a bit financially out of the hyperinflation of 2022. And at some point, you got to stop sucking about that and get back to feeling good about your business. And you know, what happened with a lot of builders, I think, is you just have to lean in again until you start getting some wins again and you feel a lot more positive about it all.
So you think, yeah, that's a good point. So you think just even the shift in mindset can add to the bottom line?
Absolutely. We just made a deliberate decision to stop spending time thinking about the negative things and get positive, you know, find a way to get some initiatives going that will sell us more houses.
I can see a few here. You've got, so you conferences, sales strategies, improve CRM services, strengthen your social media strategy. I see you partnered with realestate.com.
Yep.
So is that what you're referring to? Like just executing?
Just do stuff.
Do stuff.
You know, just, I like to, there's literature around the world that talks about being a man of action or a person of action.
Yeah.
As opposed to most of the world who isn't.
Yeah.
And like, just do things.
Yeah.
We just made a list of things that might help us with sales. Well, how about we pick up sales? So picture this, you know, sales is tough. We're not getting enough to make the business feel exciting. We're all worried about this. Should we be winding our business down? And then we remind ourselves, you can never do well by reducing your overheads. You only make money by making money. You don't make money by saving money. Well, we better get focused on sales again. So we started brainstorming, and you know, that list that you were reading through.
So you also sponsored a race car. What was the race car?
So that was the Stroud builder from Toowoomba, Patrick.
Yeah.
He's into racing. He's got a Hyundai Excel.
Yeah.
So we found a race car, someone that Patrick knew, and we sponsored this race car. We used some of the marketing funds from Stroud Homes.
Yeah.
And then we got very lucky.
Yeah.
It came in first and second in its races.
Yeah.
In the first two races.
Yeah.
And weirdly, it's got us a lot of exposure, you know, like the KPI for marketing is how often do people mention it?
Yeah.
Do people from around Australia ring you and say, hey, we saw your race car?
Yeah.
And that happened.
It's hard to measure that though, right? Like to quantify it. Like, I always think it's that billboard strategy. Like,
Yeah, that's
unless you're asking the customer specifically, you don't know where it came from, right? It's like...
Exactly. But the billboard guys put it to me like this, Lawrence. They said, it doesn't really matter what's written on your billboard right now.
Yeah.
I actually signed a contract for $770,000 of billboards across Queensland and New South Wales in 2025. And
So let's do that. So 700,000?
770,000.
770K. Queensland, New South Wales.
Yeah.
And what did you see? What was the ROI on that? Do you know?
Well, the thing is that I want to put this to you. It's a great point. And the guy said, look, it doesn't really matter what it says on the billboard. You can just put a big Stroud logo up there.
Yeah.
What it says to the community when they're worried about builders' financial stability is that this builder has enough money to buy a whole bunch of billboards.
Got it. So it's got more than one.
So this is a stable company.
Yeah, got it.
Right, that's what it says. It's so simple. It's not the message, it's the message that the action is giving.
Yeah. There's this adage, right? I think there's probably that's interesting. I think there's multiple effects of this. I think, you know, say if you wake up in the morning and your fridge is busted, right? And you know, you've woken up and you have to throw your meat out of your freezer and all that sort of stuff. What happens when you drive to work in the morning? You see the billboard that's advertising fridges that you didn't see the day before.
Yeah.
So it's probably also cycling in clients that are just in the market looking for something, then they see it and they go, oh, I want to build a home.
That's
and all
right.
Of a sudden, it's hard to measure though, I guess, unless your team are asking where did you
now
get the details from?
there's a guy that anybody that's interested in marketing, I would recommend checking out this guy called Rory Sutherland from the UK.
Yeah.
He's a little short, fat guy.
Yeah.
But he's so clever.
Yeah.
And he's really saying things.
Is he an agency?
I believe he has a big agency over there, yeah.
Okay.
But he's saying things, like we've become addicted to digital marketing because it offers ROI feedback.
Yeah.
And he says, what's happened is because everybody's done so much of that, it's this thing that, we can't do marketing unless there's an ROI feedback.
Yeah.
And he said, because of that, customer service has fallen away.
I get that.
And traditional things that are harder to track, obviously there's some ROI, so you shouldn't not do marketing just because there's no ROI feedback.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we sponsored the race car, and then people were ringing me, I was getting text messages from people all over Australia, relatives, people I hadn't talked to for ages, going, hey, we saw your race car. Cool. I know it worked. And then I went to the conference and I talked to the Stroud builders. This is the cool thing about the franchise is the guy in Dubbo, he's not far from Bathurst. All of his friends were ringing him going, you sponsored a car that's racing, this Super 2. And he's like, yeah. He didn't bother telling them that it was sponsored by the Stroud Marketing Fund. But, they were like, how much did that cost? He's like, I don't want to know. You don't want to know. So, it makes a small independent builder in one town in Australia look far bigger than they actually are. And that's influential to customers. They feel comfortable with it. They go, this is a brand that...
Because the customer sees them as stable? Is that the narrative there? Yeah.
That's one of the things that they feel.
Yeah. So I'm looking at these numbers as well. These are super great numbers. So, when you execute, this is what happens. Weekly sales grew from 7 to 21. Contract signed projected plus 32%.
Yeah.
New sales projected plus 62%.
Yeah.
And you were ranked the #1 franchise builder in this state as well.
Yeah.
So that's all execution, right? You execute all these things and good things happen.
Yeah. Good things happen and you feel good about it. And sometimes I say to my team, don't buy into this anti sort of capitalist thing. It's really fun to be good at your job. It's actually really fun. It's great.
Yeah.
Get your team together, and this is the thing in life. You've got to have a job because you got to pay your rent, feed your family. Don't miss the opportunity to go to that job and do something amazing that you could tell your grandkids about. Way back in 2025, we kicked everybody's ass, and it was fun. Because we were good and we came together as a team. And this is the thing with Australians, they love sport. They're famous worldwide for their sporting ability, but they don't carry that into business. They don't carry that same teamwork into business. And once you point that out to them and they go, we can do that here too.
It's funny, right? Especially a lot of these young guys that are going into business, they're not going into business because they're bored. They're going into business because they want to move towards prosperity, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think.
That's right.
We live on an economic planet, people. It requires the achievement and the acquisition of money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you want to go on a nice vacation and buy the nice car and look after your family and send your kids to private school, that's sort of the reason why you would start your business. People don't start a business and go, hey, I want to start a business so I can work 100 hours a week and have no money. That's not the narrative. And sometimes I think about construction entrepreneurs especially is that they miss the point about, actually I'm doing this for money, so the thing I should learn about first, because I know my trade, is managing money. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would refer everyone to Cody Sanchez. She's an American.
Love Cody.
She's so good, isn't she?
She's great.
But one of her best comments...
Her husband's a Navy SEAL.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He's quite accomplished. He's a Navy SEAL.
Great. Well, Cody said that she was having there's one clip where she talks about a meeting she had with a guy who was worth, it was over 100 million sort of thing. And the guy asked her, how much money do you have, Cody? They were walking together and...
Yeah, right.
And she said, well, I don't really know. And he said, well, how much money you don't know? How much money do you spend every month?
Yeah.
And she said, well, I don't really know. And he said, well, look, first thing I can tell you is that you're going to need to know. And money is a cruel mistress. If you don't pay attention to her, she will leave you.
Yep.
And so, this goes against a little bit the Australian thing about, not being greedy and being modest and all that, but just pay attention to your money. And, the other comment I'd say on that, Lawrence, is you're actually talking about what motivates builders to go and grow their business. Now, psychologists will tell you that people are more motivated by what they can lose than what they can gain. And if I go out and I meet with a builder in Tamworth, for example, and I say, hey, I think you could do a lot better financially joining Stroud. He'll go, yeah, but there's risk involved and I'm happy with my life as it is, But if you go to him and go, the market's tightening up, there's less jobs around, and if you don't improve your systems in your business, you're going to lose market share to the other builders. That motivates a builder much more than having a couple $1 million in his bank account every year from running a great building company. Losing market share to other builders, they hate that. But what I would say to builders is that viewpoint will hold you back. Do some goal setting, because there's some crazy good experiences to have in life, and you get those experiences by doing well in business.
So, so one for the young chippies out there, right, looking to start a franchise or a building company, is education. They have to educate themselves.
Absolutely.
Now, I know there's all these hurdles they have to jump through. They have to get licensed, and they have to have right insurances and all that sort of stuff. But they have to learn the commercial aspects of business. It's such a key component of running, because you have to manage your trades.
Absolutely.
You have to have money to pay your trades. If you're using subcontractors, if you've got FTEs, you have to have money in the bank to pay them. If you have to buy materials and you have to manage the schedule of works well, right? When I built a property, I was looking at, the builder managing the schedule of works and all the financials that are aligned to that, and you're doing your payments as you move through the schedule. And we've had a lot of variations with this builder. I'm like, okay, well but that sort of tells me that did costs go up on them, or were they poor at managing and quoting the project initially, right? Do you see that as a common problem for builders in the market, where they're losing money if they're in a fixed contract, and then they have to wear the cost? Like, how does all that come together from your lens?
Well, again,
because that's got to be vital to your business, right?
Yeah, that's
because
right.
If your franchisees don't cost the project well, especially with labor, because I know you have probably fixed costs for your builds, and you know what they are because you build a set amount of properties, and this is the one they pick.
Yeah.
Like, that's got to be detrimental to a franchisee.
So the whole process of building a project profitably is a lot harder than people think. It's a lot easier to lose money than it is to earn a profit.
Yeah.
And really, you have to do some processes that are quite boring, and a lot of builders don't want to deal with that level of detail. But the things you have to do, for starters, is you have to send a purchase order. So if you're going to hire trades to do work, you have to agree on what that price is going to be. So that's what the builder should do, is send the purchase order out. A lot of the builders we bring in from the wild don't have a purchase order sending system, which means that they don't really know how much it's going to cost them for each cost center. And then you have to do a thing that we call a handover forensic. When that house is finished, you have to compare your cost plan to what the house actually costs to build. And you have to reflect upon that. So on an ongoing business, what a good builder is doing is they're going, we thought the concrete on a 200 square meter house was going to cost us 20 grand. It cost us 22 grand. On the next house we build, we've got to allow 22,000 for the concrete. And if they're not doing that feedback process, then they're going to be missing the mark. They're going to be under quoting, and they'll lose profitability.
So if I was to say, just spend a few minutes talking about your advice for, a construction I want to call them a construction entrepreneur starting a company. Walk through those 5, 6, or 7 steps in sequence on what they should do.
So what should a construction entrepreneur do to get started in business?
Yeah, if he was to underpin success, right? Like, what are the steps they should walk through? Moving from a tradie to a company to a builder. Like, what are the steps that you would advise that they do?
Well, the first thing they have to do, I guess, is do some fairly boring stuff, which is set up their company and all that type of thing.
Company registration.
And then, I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but they got to get back to sales.
Yeah.
There's no future without sales.
Yeah.
So, my cycle is I continually meet with these builders that have signed up to be Stroud and try to convince them that sales matters. Let's get some sales going. And then once we make those sales, then the next thing is to lock down the system so they're being built profitably, and we know they're being built profitably. I don't know if that's what you're looking for there, Lawrence, but to me, that's the most important stuff. I feel like the average builder and his wife will work out how to set up a building company, how to get the QBCC stuff sorted out, how to do all that stuff. But what the trickiest bit is, can they build a house for someone, complete the whole construction, pay the invoices, and come out showing a net profit?
What's a good profit margin for you in this type of market?
Well, it's up and down, but you see, profit is related to risk. So because of, if you have a building industry and over 7,000 builders enter troubled waters, that's a risky market. So profit margins have had to go up to balance that out.
Yeah. I would add to, any young construction entrepreneur looking to start a company is that get a good accountant.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not necessarily your wife or your girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Get
Is that something you've had?
I see it a lot. I just see them managing their money poorly because they're not looking at the right financials. They're not looking at the right numbers because they don't have the right reporting and they're not recording the right data, right?
Yeah.
So they're running off an old draconian sort of paper-based thing, and they haven't managed to take their accounts into the 21st century. I think that's super common.
So I would actually put to you that accountants are a mixed bag.
Yeah.
A lot of accountants overestimate their ability as a business coach.
Yeah.
And they try to do too much of that.
Yeah.
And we've actually seen accountants holding builders back because they lack understanding
100%.
of the model.
100%. Yeah.
But a lot of builders we talked, so what we have at Stroud Homes is extensive reporting. We check cash flow every 7 days, and we look at profitability on every job. And we have the ability to look at profitability on not a job by job basis. We have the ability to look at profitability on a cost center by cost center basis. On that house right there, did we do the plastering work profitably? Did we have it painted profitably? Did we make our 20% margin or whatever it is on the painting work? And a lot of builders that I run into, what they say to me is, I don't really like all this computer system. It seems too complicated. And I have a meeting with my accountant every 6 months, and I know by the end of it whether I made money on the house or not. And I say, well, the problem is you can go broke twice in 6 months. So 6 months between meeting with your accountant is not enough. Okay?
What is enough?
Once a week.
Yeah.
So if you're going to sail a boat, you can go downstairs, make yourself a cup of coffee, and come back up and make sure the autopilot has it put you into an island because you're doing 5 knots.
Yeah.
But if you're flying a jet at 500 knots, you have to be looking, you have to be scanning every second.
Yeah.
And this is a thing with building companies. They are a high risk, high return business. So you have to keep your eye on the finances much more. And the government tries to keep builders from going broke. They bring in all of these measures, but the financial review is still, most builders I talk to in the wild say, yeah, I meet with my accountant once every 6 months. And I go, well, my Stroud builders know where they're going to be cash flow wise every 7 days.
Yeah, that's good advice. And I want to go back to the accountancy thing. And I think that's bang on. An accountancy can slow your business down because they're risk averse and they have scarcity, right? Because they're there to protect the money, not to grow it.
And to help you pay less tax.
Well, they should be doing that, but I never take business advice from an accountant, ever.
Yeah, that's good.
Ever. Because they're two different people, right? A business coach and an accountant are opposites. This guy wants to scale and help you make money.
So I think the question is, who should a young builder talk to?
Well, that's a good question, right? Probably someone is in a position where they want to be. Right, and just go and find that guy.
Exactly, and that's easier said than done. And
it is.
And I think if you study successful people and how they built their businesses, you'll find that they were very good at acquiring mentors.
Yeah.
They were very good at finding someone.
Yeah.
See, there's what, 8 billion people in the world?
Yeah.
Every single problem you have, someone's already had it.
Yeah, there's a book about it.
You just have to find your way to that guy.
Yeah,
you just got to find your way to that guy.
So what is it though? Like these people, these young entrepreneurs don't do that, right? Especially in construction, right? They sort of don't do that. I wonder why that is. Because in other markets, that's all they do. They're chasing unicorns and going from mentor to mentor to mentor to mentor.
Yeah.
But in construction, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Like I find that it's a pride thing, and I would always say profit before pride.
Yeah.
If you're going to make money in business, it's because you had the humility to say, I was wrong and I've got to do something different here. And a lot of builders that I encounter in the wild, they struggle with that. And I know I did in the early days too. I just told you the story about it. You have to understand the formula that these old guys out there, they're smart because they made all the mistakes. Another way of looking at it is that trial and error is definitely the way to learn things, Lawrence. But you don't want to be making all the errors. You want to learn from some other guy's errors.
Yeah, I agree. It's smart, isn't it? Like, why would I need to go and reinvent the wheel when someone's built the wheel multiple times already?
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't make sense from a commercial perspective.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate that people do that. So what's next for Stroud, buddy? Like, what's coming up on the horizon? And you're also in New Zealand, and how's that business going?
So New Zealand's taking along well. And again, the news for Stroud Homes New Zealand is much different than the news you'll read in the newspaper.
Yeah.
They're growing their businesses. I think we've got a nice display home under construction in Warkworth in Auckland North. And I was just reviewing the design the other night for one for Manukau, Auckland South. So new display homes, new salespeople coming. As I said before, sales fixes everything. And people still like display homes. That's another thing. Is just
they want to touch and feel it, right?
Yeah. But from my point of view, convincing builders of that fact, they all think it's great until they got to go find the money and do the work of building a display home, and then they kind of second guess it. But display homes, manufacturers really support display homes well because they know that they will sell more product if the builder uses their product in a display home. So
do they give you those materials for the display home because of the sales that it might create? Is that how that works?
So what we do on behalf of our franchisees, we're continually negotiating with suppliers. And the suppliers reward us for purchasing stuff from them by giving us even better prices. And one of the terms that we always negotiate in is display home discounts, or sometimes it's more than a discount, it's just for free. And that's a significant amount of money. I don't want to sort of say, give away all the details, but display homes are a good money spinner because the manufacturers, they want builders to do them.
Yeah. Before we get to, and I really do want to understand what's happening in your business moving forward over maybe the next 3 to 5, but talk to me about the news media. You've been hit in the news and media quite a bit, and I think you got hit during COVID quite significantly from some of the news media. Talk to me about how you handled that, and how is that going now? Because you are one of the biggest sort of residential franchises in the country.
Yeah.
So, normally if you sit up on top of a pedestal and something happens in the industry, they normally go to the person who's at the top of the pedestal, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was pretty stressful. But I found people to help me.
Yeah.
And I actually learned that there's some reporters, after they finish their career in the media, they go and start consultancies to help business owners with how they're portrayed in the media.
Yeah.
So those guys helped me a lot, and they helped me to rationalize what was happening a lot, because without that help, it's hard to understand what's happening to you when you suddenly end up in the news.
Did you take it personally?
Yeah, definitely. And I remember one particular day, we were being criticized for adjusting our prices, and we hadn't done the wrong thing, because the contracts that we had were expired. Like, people didn't have land or money available to go ahead with the contracts.
Yeah.
So any of those contracts, we actually went and said, well, if we go ahead to build you a house, it'll have to be a different contract at a different price. And that got interpreted as us just treating our customers unfairly in the media. So the first bit of advice I got was, don't talk to the media at all. And a bunch of lawyers told me that. Just don't talk to them, ignore it, it'll go away after a while.
Yeah, I get it.
Bad advice, don't do that.
Yeah.
So I eventually had a meeting with kind of the reporters that were writing the stories, and I went through all the details, and I said, what you're saying about me isn't true, and here's the evidence. And what I learned is that they will stop writing articles about you, but they won't apologize. They don't do that. They don't apologize.
Yeah, no,
So
I get it. Yeah.
they're too busy. They're onto other things, and
Yeah.
I don't hold any bitterness in my heart. It was just, I just had to go and talk to them, and I probably waited too long to do that.
Yeah, got it. Hey, here's something for you. Technology and construction. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. People are talking about AI, and look, I've used ChatGPT to write a few emails and things like that, but I'm just sitting back and listening, and innovation in construction is interesting. People come in and say, oh, this will be the next big thing, and sometimes it's building materials, but I've always found that the best way to move a building company forward is through innovating on the customer service front. People still find building a house really stressful, really difficult.
Yeah, there's some cool things happening in construction, but there's one thing that I know that's not going to be happening anytime soon. No one has mapped how to teach a robot to lay a pipe from a sink to a sump.
Yeah.
No one has taught it how to build a truss and install that truss. I think it's a long way away. I think there's technology that can help young construction entrepreneurs have better P&Ls, refine their costing, write better proposals, and all that sort of stuff.
I think that there's technology coming into building, but I think it's a little bit boring.
Yeah.
And it's just not exciting enough for people. Like, AI is very exciting, but I heard a comment recently where they said, if you need an owner's manual in today's world, the technology is no good. Like, nobody has to tell you how to use an iPhone because it's so intuitive. And whenever you use good software nowadays, it's really intuitive. Now, the software that runs building companies, some of it is really old, and it's really industrial, and it's really clunky. And I think that there's a huge opportunity to make the software that makes big building companies run run a lot better, a lot easier, a lot more intuitive.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the back end systems. And, you know, the SaaS, it should move from software to SaaS. I think it's still in the software era.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's a client-based platform instead of a subscription-based SaaS platform. So it lowers the cost and it's just more efficient.
Exactly.
But, so hiring the right people, I want to throw that at you.
Yeah.
How is that working for you, and how do you see the market right now with recruiting good quality people on behalf of your licensees and you know, the company in general?
Well, I guess I go back to a statement that can seem very cruel some days, or very kind, depending where you're at. You get the employees you deserve. So if you don't have a good system of selling your homes, then it's very hard for your salespeople. If you don't have a good system of communicating with your staff or your customers, then it's very hard. People won't like working at your building company. So setting up good systems means that people like to work for you more and you can get more people. Fortunately, the other alternative to that is just hoping that good people come and work for you and they don't leave, and that's luck. And I don't like to rely on luck to take my business where I want it. The only thing I can see to work on, Lawrence, I don't know if I'm missing something, is systems that make my business somewhere where people want to work. So the McDonald's model is to make the system so good that it's actually easy to work there, and that someone with lower and lower levels of qualification and education and maturity even can work there. Like McDonald's is run by high school students.
It's funny, right? Like our parents probably struggle to get their 17-year-old to clean their room, but McDonald's can get them to manage a store.
Isn't that cool?
Isn't that cool? That's crazy.
So I think building companies need to do the same thing. We need to look at what we do and go, well, how do we actually make it easier to manage all the purchase orders that go in and out of a project? How do we make the technology work better so that it's easier to predict the cost of a building and less common that money could be lost during the construction of that home?
So is that one of the epicenters for you for scaling the business, right? Over the next few years, is to have the systems to support scalability?
Absolutely. And I think there's like an invisible ceiling. We talked earlier in our meeting here about the bungee cord effect, where if you don't have good systems set up, you might hire a few staff, but you get slammed back down to where you started because the systems just weren't there to support it. A saying that I think is good is that your goal setting is supported by the systems. So you might say, look, I've got a goal to sell 100 houses next year. You might have that goal. Great. What are you actually going to do it? You're not going to get there if you don't do something different this year than you did last year. So for us, that's systems. How do we manage the business better? I'll just give you a couple insights. We want to know, for every lead that we hand to one of our salespeople, for every 10 leads, we want to know how many of them actually buy a house. That gives us a percentage. And
conversion, that's your conversion.
That's our conversion rate, right? We want to know what sort of fuel mileage are we getting out of that salesperson? Do we have to spend a lot of money on marketing just to get them to sell one house because they don't convert well? And so our system in the past only had a conversion rate per Stroud team. So now we're writing new code so that we'll have a conversion rate per salesperson. So we can drill right down on who are the best converters in the business, and then we can have a sales conference and put them on the stage and go, how are you doing it? For every 8 people that walk into the office, you walk out with a new house to build.
Well, that's good because
you over here, 75 people come into your office to get one house to build. So something vastly different is happening. So, that's just one little tiny example of a technological improvement we're putting into our system.
Well, you have to have the right data to make good quantitative decisions, right?
Exactly.
Otherwise, you make bad decisions.
Yeah.
So it's logic. I always like to go back to that sense of logic. People around you, talk to me about that. How important is that to you? Having the right people around you. And I'm talking about your leaders and management team, right?
Well, I've got some great people now, and it's so fun. We talked about other teams that are getting built around the world at the moment, great teams.
Yeah.
And, I met a guy in New Zealand a while back, and he said, he was a wealthy fella, and he said to me, the best way to run a small business is to turn it into a big business as soon as you possibly can. And he said, one of the reasons that that's a good idea, Lawrence, is because you can hire specialized staff. You have the size of your business to hire a person that's only good at one job, but they'll be really good at it.
Yeah.
So in the last little while, I've been able to hire a marketing expert. I've been able to hire a sales expert. And because I've been able to hire a sales expert, some of my other franchise support people don't have to worry about sales anymore. So they can drill down more to make sure that the back office systems are implemented and working at their best. And so as you grow bigger, you can hire smarter staff, which means that you got people who are more specialized at implementing the parts of the system better, and you kind of get this exponential increase where the improvements start to stack upon each other. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense.
I wonder if we're getting a bit too far out, too bad
that.
scientists for the guy that's just trying to get his carpentry business going.
Yeah, but it's important though, right? Because you can water that down and put a filtration process on it. So, you've got a big company, you've got to have leaders around you. But even as a small company, if there's one, it's just you and your mate building a company, make sure you pick the right person. Some of these guys just pick the wrong people. There's this book out, I should get this book, I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's 101 facts for how to choose a wife, right?
Yeah.
There should be 101 facts for how to pick a business partner.
Absolutely.
Or what business to pick, right? So, and I think some of these young guys, they have the wrong people around them.
I get what you're getting at, and at the end of the day, this is another sports versus business comparison in Australia.
Yeah.
People will go out, look at their rugby team and go, we're going to have a tough time winning because he's out of shape and he doesn't get on with anybody.
Yeah.
That guy's cranky and that guy's out of shape.
Yeah.
And you need to fix that if you want to win your little small town touch football league or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But then you go back to your business and you say, well, I was looking for an estimator, so I hired my cousin. Why did I hire my cousin? Because he didn't have a job.
Yeah.
Well, you're not meant to hire people because they don't have a job. You're meant to hire people because they're good at the job that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So that's another adjustment that we have to make when people come into the business. Yes, your sister-in-law might be happy that you started a business, but is she actually good at sales?
Yeah.
Why don't we go out looking for someone who has some of the characteristics that have been shown in the past to be good at sales, or good at estimating, or good at supervision, good at site supervision, whatever it is.
Yeah. So for the average tradie, if we go back to that, right, and we water that down yet again and put another filter on it, it could be as simple as for, Tommy, who's a chippy, is that when you find a good subcontractor, you develop a relationship with them and you become conscious of it, and you wrap a little bit of a barrier around them, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we work together more, and I can secure you for my jobs because you're good at what you do, you're really well priced, and how do you build upon that, right? Because I think there's so many different contractors ebbing and flowing or coming and going from a work site, and half of them are hopeless.
Well, I'll tell you a story. I had a Stroud builder call me one day and said, we're starting to run out of trades here in this town.
Yeah.
We're having trouble finding trades to do our work. And then the next thing that happened is a new site manager came onto their team. And I talked to that site manager about 5 months after he started. And I said, how are you going with the trade shortages in your area?
Yeah.
He said, trade shortages? We don't have trade shortages. He says, I make sure that the gear's on the site for the tradies before they go there, and they want to work for me. He says, I know why we had trade shortages 6 months ago is because the other supervisor screws people around all the time.
Yeah.
The tradesmen go out to site and the material's not there. He takes people's word for it that the previous stage has been completed without driving to the site or asking for a photo. And therefore, he's let too many people down, and those people no longer want to work for him. Now, the guy that owns a building company thinks that there's a trade shortage. There's no trade shortage. It's just that we've let the tradesmen down too much. And now they don't want to work for us anymore. It's very sad.
That's a good perspective. I never thought about that. It's a good lens. All right. So, talk to me about Stroud. Like, what are the next? What's Stroud beyond 2025?
Stroud beyond 2025. Well, I don't know. Like I'm just trying to stay focused on that kaizen, that Japanese concept of continually improving. How do we make it better for the customers? How do we make it better for the people that own the franchises, the Stroud businesses? And what sort of amazing results can that bring us? One of the things that we're working on right now is we had some highly, incredibly successful teams, and the curve was a little bit bellied out like that. It dropped off quite quickly. So we're working on getting some of those mid-range teams to grow their business. That's been quite successful. I've been traveling a lot, so I travel around to the teams and I go to the display home. There's usually a couple customers hanging around, have a chat with them. Why would you choose Stroud? What are we doing wrong? And then take heaps of notes to try to fix it. I talk to the staff, you know, why did you choose to come and work for us as opposed to some other builder? How do we do more of whatever caused this to be a good place for you to come and work? We're building up the sales team. One of the most exciting things that's happening, it's on your list there, it might have been a bit complicated, but last year some of our salespeople kind of had a little bit of a criticism for our sales competition. And they said, we feel that it's easier for the builders that own their company to sell houses. They have an unfair advantage. And they shouldn't be in the sales competition. Like there's a trip to Fiji is the #1 prize, so it's a big deal. And I asked a few people, I looked at that and I went, well, you know, a person that owns a building company has a lot of other responsibilities. They might have investments, they've got a lot of staff to think about, they've got the whole production side of the business. And yet they're in a sales competition and you're complaining that they're ahead of you. It doesn't seem right. Seems like So in any case, this year we've gone from about half of the sales of the top 15 salespeople being business owners to only like 4 out of the 15 being business owners. Now what that tells us is that we're getting really good at taking people out of the wilderness, training them on how to be successful in selling homes, and they're building great careers at Stroud. And once we get that happening, where we got salespeople selling homes, building their own career at Stroud, then we know that the production side of the business, the estimators, the site managers, the contract admins, and then the concreters, the carpenters, the tilers, the painters, the plasterers, they all have work. And so they're all looked after. So we really focus on that. I think there's a screw on the F-35. They call it the fastest Phillips screw in the world. And if you go to the front of an F-35 fighter jet, there's one screw that holds that dome on. And to me, that's salespeople.
Yeah, I can see you're really focused on that, which I think last time I spoke with you, that wasn't a primary focus, but...
We were in crisis mode, you know, the market was so unexpectedly tumultuous that we found it hard to focus on. And you go back to your tradie who's got an apprentice and one tradesman on his crew, and he's doing carpentry contracting. He's got the same challenges.
100%.
He'll get a job that takes longer than he thinks it will, or a job that's not as profitable as he hopes, or his wife will be having a baby and there'll be something from the family side that stirs things up. So you're always battling against distractions in business, and the better that you can keep going back to that one thing, how do I put these distractions aside and focus on sales, the better things get.
Got to focus on sales. If I was to, you know, so what you just said about what you're focused on in your company as the CEO and the founder, is what some people I don't think realize in business, whether it's a big or small company, is what they do is they build one level and then they knock it down, go next door and then build another level. When what they should do is just build another level on top of the one that they just built. And what I mean by that is what they miss is that what they should do is look at the 1% incremental improvements in the company, which give you an exponential growth rate, right? Because it's like, for us, we have a online construction training brand, right, an RTO.
Yeah.
So I'm now going back and looking at the product because I want to make it the best product in the market.
Yeah.
And that in itself creates good, healthy business and referral business, and your LTV increases and all that sort of stuff, right? Well, I could go over here and set up another company, but I'm not going to do that. I just want to focus on having the best product in the market.
Wouldn't it be great to get all these young guys through that Cert 4, that diploma building and construction? That's the one you're talking about?
Yeah, the Cert 4 in building construction and the diploma in building construction are probably our two biggest sellers.
Wouldn't it be great to, get them through that with a bit extra, like a bonus package of business skills and understanding sales a little bit, and get them to the point where, see, a lot of universities sell their programs based on how successful their students have become in life. So they go, if you do this course, if you come in this door over here, you could be like this guy over here with a highly successful career. And if we could do that with the Cert 4 and say, hey, come do this here. We've got a bunch of guys that have really successful building companies now.
Well, we should do that. I sometimes think about it as a responsibility, right? If we have the resources and the means to do it and it helps people, we should do it. Anyway, James, hey, thank you. Appreciate it. Really good to talk to you.
Thanks.
Good luck with the company, the business, and the next few years.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I really appreciate you having me in. It's always fun coming and talking to you. And I will say, though, I don't think we need luck. We just need focus and hard work, and everything seems to work out when you do that.
Good advice.
But thanks for the best wishes.
Thank you.
Cool. That's a wrap.